Is the U.S. heading back to war with Iran? Today, we need to talk about the massive illusion being sold to the global public right now. If you turn on the news, you will see a lot of talking heads panicking about an impending World War III. You will hear about escalating tensions, about the threat of massive kinetic military strikes, and about how the Middle East is a powder keg just waiting for a single spark. But what if I told you that the war has already started? What if I told you that the spark was already lit, but it doesn't look anything like what you see in the movies? Right now, an entirely different kind of warfare is being executed. It is quiet. It is invisible to the naked eye. But it is infinitely more devastating than a bombing campaign. The United States is not heading back to a traditional war with Iran, because the United States is already actively dismantling the Iranian regime from the inside out, without firing a single shot. And there is one specific detail, one glaring omission in the mainstream narrative that exposes the entire reality of the situation on the ground. When you realize what it is, everything happening in the Middle East right now will suddenly make perfect, terrifying sense. By the end of this video, you are going to understand the actual geopolitical chessboard. You are going to see how a calculated war of attrition, driven by a suffocating naval blockade, is bleeding Tehran dry. You are going to understand why the Iranian regime is currently trapped in a massive, nationwide internet blackout. You are going to find out why the supreme leader has vanished like a ghost. And most importantly, you are going to understand the brilliant, terrifying trap that has been laid out for Hezbollah, and why Israel is currently fighting with one hand tied behind its back. This is the story of how you break an empire, not with bombs, but with strategic patience. So get comfortable, hit that subscribe button, and pay very close attention, because what we are about to discuss changes the entire global landscape. Let's get into it. Let us start by stripping away the noise and looking at the actual strategy being deployed by the new Trump administration. If you listen to the conventional wisdom in Washington, the only way to deal with a hostile rogue state is through kinetic military action. You fly B-2 bombers, you launch Tomahawk missiles, you destroy radar installations, and you blow up nuclear facilities. But the current administration looked at that playbook and threw it in the trash. Why? Because kinetic strikes create martyrs. Kinetic strikes give a dying regime a reason to rally its citizens around the flag. Kinetic strikes are exactly what Tehran wants, because it validates their victim narrative on the global stage. Instead of giving them what they want, the United States has deployed a strategy of absolute, unapologetic economic strangulation. We are talking about the mother of all naval blockades. Imagine the Strait of Hormuz right now. It is one of the most critical maritime choke points on the planet. For decades, Iran has used this narrow strip of water to blackmail the entire world. They have seized commercial tankers, they have harassed international shipping, and they have held the threat of a closed strait over the head of the global economy. But the tables have been completely turned. The United States has essentially built a wall of steel across the water. The American naval presence isn't there to launch a massive invasion. It is there to act as a tourniquet. The U.S. is under absolutely zero pressure to execute direct military strikes. They don't need to. They have sealed the exits, and they are letting economic starvation do the heavy lifting. Tehran is currently trapped in a corner. They cannot export their oil. They cannot import critical military technology. The shadow fleets that kept their economy afloat have been paralyzed by an unyielding American maritime presence. The Iranian regime is bleeding money at a catastrophic rate, and they are desperately, frantically seeking diplomatic lifelines just to get the Strait of Hormuz functioning again. They are begging for an off-ramp, but the door is locked from the outside. Now, if you ask the regime's state-sponsored media, they will tell you a completely different story. They will tell you that the Islamic Republic has never been stronger. They are broadcasting military parades. They are making public declarations of rearmament. They are boasting about their indestructible proxy network. But it is all a facade. It is a paper tiger standing in the rain. And here is how we know it for an absolute fact. If a nation is truly strong, if a government is truly secure in its power, It does not need to shut down the internet. Yet right now, the entire nation of Iran is paralyzed under an ongoing draconian internet blackout. The regime has plunged its own citizens into digital darkness. Why do you do that? You only do that when you are terrified of your own people. You do that when you are functioning on a desperate war footing, frantically trying to stop the spread of internal dissent, preventing the organization of protests, and hiding the reality of the economic collapse from the outside world. An internet blackout is not a sign of a strong, unified nation preparing for external war. It is the undeniable symptom of a fragile, deeply wounded regime that is terrified of internal collapse. But that is not even the most damning piece of evidence. The ultimate proof of their profound vulnerability is the sudden, inexplicable absence of the supreme leader. Think about this for a second. We are living in the most digitally connected era in human history, a time when anyone on Earth can pull a small piece of glass from their pocket and broadcast their voice to millions of people in an instant. Yet, in the 2 weeks since the recent ceasefire declarations, the supreme leader of Iran has completely vanished from the public eye. He has not made a public appearance. He has not released a video. He has not even produced a simple 10-second voice note. Nothing. Total radio silence. In a regime built entirely around the cult of personality and absolute religious authority, the silence of the supreme leader is deafening. It proves that the regime is deeply, structurally compromised. Whether he is incapacitated, in hiding, or terrified of exposing his location to American intelligence, his absence proves that they are completely on the defensive. The head of the snake is paralyzed, and the body is starting to realize it. Now, this brings us to a massive global misconception that the media continues to peddle, and it directly affects your wallet. For 40 years, the prevailing geopolitical theory has been that if the Strait of Hormuz is disrupted, the global economy will instantly implode. The narrative says that a naval blockade in the Middle East will send the price of crude oil to $300 a barrel, crash the stock market, and plunge the Western world into an instant depression. That narrative is a myth, and the world is currently watching that myth shatter in real time. What the experts fundamentally misunderstand is the raw, calculating power of global market recalibration. The global economy is a living, breathing organism, and it is incredibly adaptable. Yes, the initial shock of a blockade causes panic, but if that blockade persists, as it is right now, the global energy markets simply recalibrate. Multinational energy corporations, logistics giants, and global commodity traders are not just sitting around waiting for permission to move their products. They are actively finding alternative logistical routes to circumvent the strait. They are heavily utilizing pipelines across the Arabian Peninsula. They are adjusting supply chains, maximizing domestic American production, and leaning on non-OPEC suppliers. As the market realizes that it can actually survive without Iranian oil, a profound shift occurs. The speculation evaporates, the panic buying stops, the price of oil stabilizes. And what happens to Iran when the world realizes it doesn't actually need their shipping lane? They become entirely isolated. They become economically irrelevant. The one piece of leverage they have held over the global economy for decades is neutralized. They are watching their greatest geopolitical weapon turn into a rusty, useless relic. But the ripple effects of this strategy do not stop at the borders of Iran. To truly understand the genius of this geopolitical masterstroke, we have to look north, to the border of Israel and Lebanon. We have to look at Hezbollah. Right now, on the Lebanese front, Hezbollah is acting completely out of character. They are continuously violating the terms of the recent ceasefire. They are launching sporadic rockets, organizing border provocations, and doing everything in their power to bait the Israel Defense Forces into a localized kinetic conflict. Why would they do that? Why would a battered proxy force beg for a fight with one of the most advanced militaries on the planet? Because Hezbollah is desperate to shift the global narrative. The ceasefire terms demanded their disarmament and a withdrawal past the Litani River. If peace breaks out, Hezbollah loses its reason for existing. They need a conflict to justify their weapons, to maintain their grip on the Lebanese government, and to prove to their benefactors in Tehran that they are still a valuable asset. They are trying to lure Israel into the mud to change the subject, but they have walked right into a trap. The United States, under the Trump administration, is enforcing a strict doctrine of tactical restraint on Israel. The message from Washington to Tel Aviv is very clear. Do not take the bait. Do not get dragged into a messy, localized ground war in southern Lebanon that will distract the world from what is happening in Tehran. The overarching doctrine being deployed here is brutally simple, yet incredibly effective. It operates on the premise of the parasite and the host. Hezbollah is not an independent entity. They are a proxy limb. They do not manufacture their own advanced precision-guided munitions. They do not fund their own billion-dollar payrolls. They get their money, their weapons, and their marching orders entirely from Iran. Therefore, if you want to destroy Hezbollah, you do not need to send Israeli tanks rolling into Beirut. That is what Hezbollah wants. That is a meat grinder. Instead, you sever the financial head in Tehran. By utilizing the naval blockade to completely bankrupt the Iranian regime, the United States is essentially turning off the faucet. When Iran is hemorrhaging hundreds of millions of dollars a day, they can no longer afford to send pallets of cash to Lebanon. When the bank accounts dry up, the proxy limbs wither and die. The strategy is to force Hezbollah into absolute submission through economic starvation, without dragging Israel into a premature, multi-front war that would cost thousands of lives. However, there is a very real, very dangerous ticking clock attached to this strategy, and it is located in Jerusalem. While the American strategy dictates holding off on massive retaliation in Lebanon until Iran capitulates, Israel is in an incredibly difficult position. You cannot tell a sovereign nation to just sit there and take rocket fire indefinitely. Israel cannot fight with one hand tied behind its back forever. The citizens of northern Israel have been displaced from their homes for an extended period. The political pressure on the Israeli government to secure their northern border is reaching a boiling point. The current holding pattern, this tactical restraint engineered by the United States, is temporary. It is a fragile equilibrium. The calculation in Washington is a race against time. Can the American naval blockade bankrupt Iran and starve Hezbollah before Israel loses its patience? Because make no mistake, if Hezbollah continues its provocations, if they miscalculate and launch a strike that crosses a red line, a broader geographical engagement by the Israel Defense Forces is absolutely inevitable. Israel will take the gloves off, the restraint will end, and the region will plunge into exactly the kind of kinetic chaos the U.S. is currently trying to avoid. This is the ultimate high-wire act of modern geopolitics. We are witnessing a superpower use the global financial system and maritime dominance as a weapon of mass destruction against a rogue regime. We are watching an empire collapse in slow motion, suffocated by its own isolation, while its proxy armies starve in the desert, desperately trying to start a war they cannot afford to fight. The United States isn't heading back to war with Iran. The United States is currently finishing one, and they are doing it by systematically turning out the lights on the Islamic Republic. The coming weeks are going to dictate the future of the Middle East for the next 50 years. Will the Iranian regime crack under the pressure of the blockade, leading to a massive internal revolution and the collapse of their terror network? Or will Hezbollah succeed in baiting Israel into a massive regional conflict before the money runs out? We are standing on the edge of a massive historical pivot. You are watching the old rules of warfare being rewritten in real time right before your eyes. Drop your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think this strategy of economic strangulation and naval blockades is the right move? or is a military confrontation inevitable? Are we witnessing the final days of the regime in Tehran? Let's have a real conversation about it down below, because this is exactly how we stay ahead of the curve. If this video helped you connect the dots on what is actually happening behind the global headlines, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the hidden mechanisms driving our world. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a critical update. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking questions. I'll see you in the next one.